Good evening to our friends on the East Coast, good afternoon to our friends on the West Coast, and good in-between time to our friends in the in-between spaces, which we all find ourselves more and more these days, don't we? We have a wonderful show tonight. Welcome to the Biodressin Center for Social Justice virtual headquarters. Welcome to the Social Justice Power Hour. My name is Robt Seda-Schreiber. I am the chief activist here, and as always, your host, and thrilled and honored to share this virtual community with you and with our guest tonight, José Vilson, who's an educator, activist, author, and just wonderful, wonderful human being. Someone who is doing the real work in the trenches of the classroom and making it exponential for us all to embolden and bolster our community and make sure we're strengthening each other from the very beginning. But before we bring Jose on, of course, we want to talk about some things that are going on here at the center, so you all are aware. First and foremost, if you've tuned in before, you know we have a great Get Out the Vote program with the wonderful, inspirational craftivist Kyle Burkhart, who created and designed these beautiful voting postcards. She was on last Friday on the show. She's going to be on this Friday as well to remind folks about this project. She is putting together, with the center's help, a pack of 5 postcards with postcard stamps and instructions on how you can encourage folks to vote. It's so important that we all get our voices heard in this election especially. So please, if you're interested, contact us at the center, or you can contact Kyle directly on Instagram. She is known as Vacuuming the Lawn. So please reach out and get one of these great voting postcards and make sure your voice is heard and other people's voices are heard. All our voices need to be heard. And speaking of voices that need to be heard, as I said, tonight we have the amazing José Luis Vilson, educator, activist, founder of EduColor. Tomorrow night we have Josh Gondelman, incredible comedian, producer of De Sus and Miro, author. Should be a really interesting conversation. And Friday, we bring back to our virtual stage the Open and Out Mic Night. We haven't done it in about a month or so, so we welcome back our performers from the LGBTQIA community, allies, friends, and family, sharing talent and spirit together. That's what we have coming up this week. And then in the coming weeks, we have some amazing guests. So let me just throw them down for you. Martha S. Jones will be with us this Monday coming up, author of Vanguard, How Black Women Broke Barriers, Won the Vote, and insisted on equality for all. We have Peter Cooper, illustrator, journalist, and provocateur, been doing this work for 3 decades. Jill Twiss, writer of A Day in the Life of Marlon Bundo and a couple other great kids' books that deal with really important themes. Denise Froman, the organizer of Poets for Puerto Rico. We have Carly Usden, esteemed film director. David Berhinsky will be back with us. And continuing, we are now going to have Folk First Fridays. Every first Friday of the month, David Berhinsky will be with us doing folk music for our community. This coming up Friday, October 2nd, we're going to do a Get Out the Vote sing-along, so please join us for that. The author of The League of Wives. This is a great story of how these women whose husbands were POWs in Vietnam took on the U.S. government and brought their husbands home. Heath Lee is the author, and Reese Witherspoon just optioned this for a movie. TJ Stiles, one of the few people in the entire world who has two, count them, 2 Pulitzer Prizes, wonderful biographer, wonderful social justice activist. Katha Pollitt's going to be with us, author of Pro, Reclaiming Abortion Rights, also writes steadily for The Nation. And we're going to just announce today, we just solidified this, we're going to have a great panel on the important transgender documentary Disclosure. All those things will come up and more, and we have a few more folks we want to talk about. We have just today also was in contact with Representative Kenyatta, who is the first openly gay Black legislator in Philadelphia. We're going to have a great conversation with him. The author of this graphic novel, an adaptation of Kurt Vonnegut's Slaughterhouse-Five, Ryan North, is going to be with us. Mike Hotpence is going to join us the night of the vice presidential debate. We're going to have a pre-show a great second Mike Hotpence Variety Hour coming at you, so be ready for that. And last but not least, in a very surreal and wonderful, wonderful surprise, Lou Diamond Phillips, of all people, is going to join us and talk about what he's been doing. And he's been doing a lot of social justice activism, and I can't wait to talk to him about his journey and how he got there, and maybe about that car too. So all that is coming up on the Social Justice Power Hour, and so much more. Surprises aplenty. But I'm really excited about our guest tonight, although I do not see him in the queue. So I'm hoping that he's going to pop up any moment now and join us. But I'll tell you a little bit about José Vilson. He is an educator. He is an activist. He is an author. A couple of things he has written. This is one of the things that really spoke to me. He said, most of my work as a math teacher isn't about math. It's helping students believe that they can also do math. We don't talk about that enough. The second thing he wrote that was really moving to me, and I think speaks volumes about who he is as a person and as an educator, he wrote this, quote, writing a piece about myself and the 8th grader in me needs more hugs than he got. He wasn't all right, and he didn't have a way to say that. It took him decades to say that too. Don't tell him I told you that. So those are some of the wonderful things that Jose has said, and that's why I am so moved as an educator. I see him here. I don't see him on my screen, so I'm hoping that we'll be able to see him. Jose, can you hear me? Yeah, so we're having a little bit of technical difficulty having Jose on the show, so just give us a moment to so I know that he's capable of joining us. We just need to figure out how to make it work. So just give us a moment, everybody, and we'll make sure that we'll have Jose with us in a matter. In the meanwhile, I will share this last quote with you from Jose's writings. Well, wait. I think that we might have some magic happening. There we go. Jose is with us now, so welcome to the virtual stage. Jose, sorry about that.
That was kind of weird, but I'm back. Hi.
One of the things about this show, my friend, is I'll watch CNN or MSNBC now, and they'll have technical difficulties, and I'll say, yeah, see, if they can have their technical, I can too. So, but anyway, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Thank you.
So you are the very epitome of what we need right now. You are someone who is in the very most important space in our classrooms, educating and inspiring our kids, but also educating and inspiring fellow teachers. So thank you for that.
I appreciate that very, very much.
So tell us, how did it start? What is the secret origin? What's the radioactive spider that bit you and made you become this superhero of the education community?
I mean, these are all good questions. And, as I'm working through my doctoral studies right now, I'm thinking about how basically it's this tension between the teacher I want to be versus the teacher who I never wanted to be, right? So there's all the teachers who are really, really great to me, and all the folks who just taught me everything from, how to speak in public, how to be a leader in the classroom, how to not shy away from my intellect. And then there are those who try to hide my intellect, try to make me, I guess, humble, but do so in a really deleterious and frankly biased way. And there were any number of teachers who I just said, you know what, if I could do this math thing better than him, then I'm doing a service, especially for the kids who don't often get teachers who, actually believe in them. I found too often, especially in the middle school level, like too many kids who were like in ninth grade were saying, well, I'm going to drop out of math because this is way too hard. But then I go back to eighth grade math with the same kids and they'd be like, I don't get it. So somewhere along the line, we lost a bunch of different children because the adult never said, hey, like I need to stop what I'm doing and I need to really rethink about like what I'm doing. And so I found myself saying, if I'm going to be a change agent, then I personally need to step into the eighth grade spot. Not to say that everybody else did, but for me, I felt like, I'm a computer science major in undergrad. This has to be a thing that I do, because if I can do it, then I think anybody else can. And having that mentality has been really powerful for me.
But there's also a strong familial and emotional component to what you do. And I don't know if you heard, because we were trying to get you on the stage, but one of the things you wrote, and it bears repeating, you said, writing a piece about myself and the eighth grader in me needs more hugs than he got. He wasn't all right, and he didn't have a way to say that. It took him decades to say that too. Don't tell him I told you that.
Yeah, I mean that's something I just had to think about, because let's call it for what it is. I think those of us who are teachers, we're trying to reconnect with our inner child in many different ways. We recognize how we have been hurt along the way, especially those of us who are of color, who have been marginalized, who are poor, who are coming from any number of different spaces that are societally ostracized and marginalized and oppressed. Let's call that for what it is. So we come into the teaching profession knowing full well that's what we want to do as change agents. We don't always know that like the structures are going to violently push back against us at every turn. But there's something to like saying, you know what, Mr. Wilson, you're going to be the best teacher that that eighth grade version of you could have had, and not just from an academic sort of thing. Because I think I was good. I did what I need to do compliance wise, and I was a pretty academically strong student, but the social emotional person, the person who said, you know what, I'm gonna stop my lesson and I'm gonna teach about this moment. The student who needed, that somebody to say there's something not right with the world. That teacher who said we have to do better, and we have to be just about how our school operates, and pushes back against narratives that are deficit minded. So many of our children are suffering in our schools, and not because of their own intellect, but because the opportunities that are afforded to them are almost nil. It's almost like, oh yeah, like you don't deserve good school. You don't deserve adults who actually ostensibly care about you. And maybe like somewhere down the line, they say, oh, that kid's all right. But they'll start off by, being mean and awful. And I think all of us fall into that trap, but I try to get closer and closer to the best teacher possible by just saying, you know what, I'm going to connect with the kids as often as possible. I'm going to try to find ways to make my pedagogy relatable to them. I'm going to make sure that my lessons are simple enough that they feel like they can teach, and which is always like the mind trick, right? It's like, oh yeah, like I got all these really good degrees just so I can make it simple enough for an eighth grader to do. And then by the time that they get to ninth grade, they're like, I feel so confident in this math. And so many of my kids who come out of my classroom are super confident, so confident that the teachers are like, but you learned all this last year. Why are you here? And it's like, oh yeah, because systemic racism made it such that I had to be in a remedial class all over again when I had learned all this material. Or they go into a more advanced class and they're like, yeah, I learned this already. And if you just give me the good work, then I'll know what I need to do, and make them into, and I wouldn't even say, I guess, independent thinkers, for lack of a better word. I mean, they just end up becoming the teachers in their own classrooms that very first year in freshman year. So I'm like, yes, that's exactly what I want to hear. If you tell me at any point, oh, like I can do this by myself, Mr. Wilson, I don't need you, then that means I did my job. If at any point, like you still need me way too much, I'm going to step in and help you where you need to be. But my goal is to make sure that all my students don't need adults, because let's call it for what it is. They're ingrained to violently think that they need us too much, instead of saying, no, we as teachers need to facilitate their own well-being and their own ability to be self-determinant. And I think that's a powerful leverage point for all of us.
Indeed. I want to pull a thread at something you said very early on, in that you said that you wanted to be the teacher that you needed as an eighth grader. And that's been such a common theme on so many of the guests here on the Power Hour. You know, whether they are gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender, Black, Indigenous, people of color, you know, whatever their gender identity, ethnicity, racial or social background, there's this common theme of wanting to be that person they needed to see when they were younger. Chris Mosier said it. He's the first transgender Olympic trial athlete. And when he was on the show, he said that something he always bears in mind. He wants to be that person that he needed to see when he was a child. And he said the same exact thing. And I find it to be fascinating that we all just want to be recognized. We all just want to also be able to recognize. And that's why your work is so powerful. Because you deal with very radical sentiments. You deal with very radical things. We'll get to that during our conversation. But you do so in a way that is with a warm embrace. It's a pretty amazing thing, my friend. How do you navigate that?
I think so much of this work is hard. I think we're in a world where, like right now, yes, I get that we're trying to strive for, more inclusivity, more understandings, more complex and nuanced understandings about the ways that we work. Like we didn't have the same language that we do now about, for example, our lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, plus, and any number of different identities around that, right? We didn't have that language growing up. I know I didn't. And so, like, thinking about those levels, or even thinking around race and how we're trying to think about the nuances between, American Black versus Caribbean versus, directly from the continent of Africa, or even the disparate conversations happening around Asia. You're like, there's just so many different ways to layer identity. And so for me, I feel like, okay, I'm going to approach it from a math sentiment. If I could find a way to get you to connect to this really complex and abstract idea, then I've done a really good job of pulling you in. Be not just regardless of who you are, but because of who you are, right? There's the different like play there. When you say regardless, you're saying like, yeah, I really don't care about your identity. Like, just follow along with what I'm saying. Versus if I say because, it's like, no, I'm pulling you in because I need you to be in here. I need your whole humanity to be part of this thing. And so anytime that I can approach, really complex issues from a truly inclusive way, then I'll do a better job. And of course, I always say this from the perspective of someone who, if I've thought of something, that means I probably thought of all the wrong ways it can go. 5 different ways, 6 different ways. And, as a middle school math teacher, this well, right? Like, things are going to go wrong. You have a lesson plan and then it laughs back at you. You're like, haha, you thought it was good. And then the lesson plan isn't for like, it's kind of for yourself, but you think it's for the kids, and the kids laugh at you like, oh yeah, but what do you really mean by that? And so our lesson plans have to be about kids, right? And so similarly, anything that we do has to be about the people that we're trying to serve, the people that we're trying to address, and how we're going to make them feel like they are part of the thing that you're trying to accomplish. Like there is no part of the things that I do that I haven't thought at least a good 5 or 6 different ways, and the type of people that and how it's going to be received, and then who unfortunately gets excluded. Like the white supremacists will inevitably get excluded because I'm speaking directly to humanity. Like I have to be. There's a paradox in that way, but the folks who are marginally like pushed to the side racially and from gender perspectives, even ability perspectives, we haven't really considered those often. But, at any given moment when I think about the folks who are most marginalized in society, most vulnerable, I'm like, you know what? Let me find a way to address them in a way that is both affirming, and then I can, if there are things that are quote unquote wrong, I can still find a way to teach, to push them in an alternative way. So I don't think I'm special in that way, but I do try my best to be as human as possible, because that's really like that's the crux for me for all this stuff.
So there's a modesty to what you're saying, and I understand that you have to carry yourself, but I think I hope you understand the import of what you do, that it is extraordinary. It is, and it shouldn't be. it shouldn't be, right? I mean, that's kind of, and does that upset you? Does it upset you that what you're doing shouldn't be extraordinary? It should be de rigueur. It should be what everybody does. It's very almost commonsensical, but you're the one that has put words to it. You're the one that has put action to it.
Whew, I think that's a really deep question. I think getting mad is a thing that I like doing on a regular basis because there's so many things to be outraged about. And I think specifically the last 3 years and change has really put that and surfaced it to the fore, right? Like I actually became a burgeoning activist during the Bush 2 administration. And he found any number of ways to rip up constitutions, become war criminal of all sorts of things, and they'll find ways to discriminate against all types of people, but do it under very flowery language. And so as I was growing up in that activism space, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm mad all the time. And then as I got older, I was like, it's okay to be mad all the time, and I need to be mad all the time, and then I need to keep doing my work so I can actually have the change that I have in the scope and of what I do. So do I get mad when people like don't try to do what I do? I mean, I'd at least love to see people really care about kids in a profound way. That would be really nice. I don't always see that. Or to stop blaming parents who don't have other options. Folks who want to keep blaming poor people for being poor. Folks who want to tell people to, oh, like my ancestors did this, and it's like when you look at their family history, you recognize, oh snap, they got a lot of benefits from that family history. Or any number of people who say things like, well, in this country everybody's equal, and I don't know why you keep bringing up all this race stuff. I'm like, you look at your mirror and then come look at mine. You would never want to trade shoes with me, no matter how handsome I am. There's just things like I smile and I understand that I'm livid very often. I am angry all the time, but then the ways that I display my anger may not be to everybody's liking. But then just right under that surface of that calm is like a really big storm, and I often advise people to be very conscientious about that. How when I approach kids, I try to approach them with love. I try to do the things that I need to do to make them feel welcome. But then, with that said, there's that other flip side where I have to protect them against so many adults who are coming after them. And oftentimes I get mad at the folks who like are right above me, for example, who are like in that freshman year of high school. And I'm like, but this child was brilliant in my class. What happened in your class that wasn't happening? Or it's like, don't try to blame the 8th grade teacher, because you're the 9th grade math teacher, and the 8th grade teacher didn't like do what you said you wanted them to do. It's like, no, that's not the way this works. The way this works is you gotta know who the child is, go know their cultures, go understand who they are as people, and then adjust your pedagogy to address them. Not that they have to do the thing that you want them to do, which is, by the way, what the 8th grade version of me would have said too, because the 8th grade version of me actually got the good teachers who said, you know what, I'm going to go learn what my kids want to do. And that prepared me for, the successes that I've had in life. But I can't say that everybody's had that at all. In fact, I would say that many, many schools out there are still suffering from any number of things I would call adultism, where people, adults think that they're just so much better than the children who they serve. And it's like, no, actually, the kids come with a lot of really brilliant thoughts, and their parents are probably pretty brilliant too if they're coming in with these critical thoughts, but we haven't given them the leverage or the power to be able to enact change upon that. And of course, if they were given that power, you might be removed. And that's another question too that they have to be very conscientious about. But that's for another time.
No, that's for tonight. We'll get to it. But how is it how do you defend the idea that we have to teach each student as though they're an individual and consider their background, their ethnicity, their social structure, their home life, their intellectual, emotional, psychological makeup? How do you defend that against the teacher or the administrator who says, we don't have the time or the energy or the bandwidth to look at this class of 30 kids and see 30 individuals. We have to teach en masse. How do you defend that? How do you explain that and the import of it and why it is, essential to our future?
Something about that conversation, that dichotomy, it makes it really interesting when you try to talk about the collective power of teaching, right? So it's not that I'm trying to teach one by one, is that I try to cast a wide net, and then through that wide net, I can start like figuring out what the pieces are within there, right? So when I first teach, like I go through an exercise that everybody knows, which is like, oh, like let me call the roster and see who's here. But then as I'm doing that roster, I do something really explicit, which is, oh, your name is Adrian. Did I get that right? Oh, okay, thank you. Your name is, and I'm going to actually name the person's name now because that's the name I had to study. So like I had this student named Siklali, right? And it was spelled Xitlaly. It's a it's a indigenous based name, a Mexican based name, right? And as I'm reading it, I'm like, I don't know how to say this, but she's trying to teach me, and no one else is, trying to really help me out because they're just like, whatever, it doesn't matter. And I'm like, no, actually, her name matters way too much to me. So I'm gonna figure out how to say your name. I know how to say these other ones because my background is Dominican, so a lot of the names that I'm reading here are Dominican, but this one is more Mexican based. So I need to go home and study it. And I was like, let me see you. I want to see you after class for a couple of minutes. All right, let me talk to you. So teach me how to say your name. And so she goes through it about 2 to 3 times. I memorize it. I'm like, okay. So I was like, you know what? I want you to hold me accountable. On Monday, I want you to come see me. And if I still haven't pronounced your name right, then I need to up your grade a little bit and make sure you get a little boost over everybody else. So of course, like that's my challenge because I don't want to do that. So sure enough, like I go home, I start studying. I'm like, oh, Siklali. And I'm in the shower. I'm in the shower. I'm brushing my teeth. I'm like doing all these other things. I'm like, oh, let me just study Siklali. And then I come back. I'm like, oh, so Siklali, yada yada, right? I was like, is that your name? Did I say it correctly? She's like, yes. I'm like, okay, so I got you. Locked her in. And from then on, the student who, and I also did something simultaneously too, which is like I would give students, I guess, a bio sort of questionnaire, if you will. And in that questionnaire, she was saying how she was not a strong math student, and then she comes out of my classroom as a strong math student who's able to ask really good questions. And even after she had me, people were still saying, "Oh, she's good at math. Like, how'd you do this?" I'm like, I just really got to know her. And it's not that I have time with every single child per se. I get to know them over time. And I try to make time with every child as well as I can. But it really is about that wide net. And then saying, up front, here are the standards of hope and love that I have for everybody in this classroom, and how I hope that my pedagogy is responsive. And then I'm going to think about 5 or 6 different questions or ways of approaching this math that might help each and every one of you. So by the time it filters down to the 1 or 2 students who really, really need me, I can spend more time with them. But like my approaches are both collective and individual. And so like, that's what I try to tell administrators, with varying effects, mind you. There's my latest one has been really amazing about that sort of thing because she sees how the kids react to that. But in prior administrations, not quite as helpful. So I there are teachers who don't quite understand that. They like, just being able to teach en masse and say, hey, single row, single file, everybody seated. You do what I say, and you have to emulate exactly the way that I think about this math. But there was a tension there for me. It was hard for me to teach in a way that like just suggested that everybody had to do single row, single file. Everybody do exactly what I say, and then I yell at you the minute that you don't get it right. Like my spirit just could not take that anymore. That was just too much energy for me. So I just decided to do something that was more natural, which was, hey, like, okay, so I'm in this class, you're in this class, and we're gonna do some really awesome things, hopefully. And I'm gonna meet you where you are, but I need you to come with me, and we need to work on the same things together, so I can get you to places that you may not be able to get to otherwise. So if you can get to a point where you're really thoughtful about this math, then you're gonna be in really good shape. And that's me. Like,
It's just wonderful. And you talked about names, and names are so important. And I remember when I was teaching and I would call roll, and people who don't teach don't understand this, but calling roll in and of itself is such a unique experience. And I remember one of the things that really broke my heart almost and really disturbed me is I would call roll, and more often than not, I would call one of my students on Hill, and he would say, no, it's Angel. And I would call one of my students Juan, and he'd say, no, it's John. And I found all these students would be assimilating into the culture and losing who they were, their family, their heritage, their identity. And I always felt that it wasn't my place, and it certainly wasn't in the, I taught middle school art, so there wasn't really much of that I could do there. But how do you help your students? Because I'm sure that's part of what you're talking about as well, making sure that their heritage, their backgrounds, their histories, their families, and their names are kept intact.
I think a lot of it is trust. So something I learned, for example, is that there are some cultures out there where like even the mere mispronunciation of your name is disrespectful. So in order to avoid any of that, they just choose to give you the name that you probably find easier to pronounce. And a lot of that is cultural. So like they'll look at me and they'll be like, okay, well, he may not get it right. He may not, whatever. So I'll just give him the most basic nickname I could give him. And I'm like, okay, fine. So then I'm going to try to pronounce it once. And if I get it right, then can I get to pronounce it again? But again, that's permission, right? That's culture. I think, and this goes a lot to like this question around like students who do choose to, or even decide to, go into their fullest form, which is like, they get to say, hey, like, I no longer want to be called this name. I want you to call me by this name instead. I like this name better. Or something happened with my parents where I don't really like this last name anymore. Can you please refer me to like this last name? These are all like questions of choice. And so I'm often very attuned to that. And at the same time, I also have to make sure that it's because regarding against people disrespecting who you are as a person and not guarding against what, white supremacy, which is like, oh yeah, these folks only know how to pronounce things that are more European. And I'm always like, okay, I'm going to find a way to slip in to try to figure out whether or not it's what's the reason why you want me to say things one way versus another way. And then if I find that reason, we could solve the conversation. But it's very much like it's got to be about the student and about their own agency. And at some point, they may choose to say, hey, you know what? Like, I like Juan after all, and I should have been more thoughtful about that, but I wasn't ready to hear that then. Okay. But I think the way that I've approached it has really been helpful for a lot of different students, especially my students who have transitioned from one to the other. And then like you see the name on the bio roster, but then they weren't allowed to change their name on the bio roster. And you're like, oh, like that's unfortunate, right? Like we should be more progressive than that. But I understand that our systems are still working on MS-DOS and not even like Windows 95 or anything. So that it's bananas. But even still, like that's up to the teacher. The teacher really needs to be more conscientious. So for me, I'm just like, all right, I'll find ways to like have the conversation with you. Like, oh, why do you call yourself this? Or, what did you get offended when I called you this? And, being very thoughtful about that. But for me, it's just choice. It's just choice.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was hoping that you would. That's what it is, right? So when did you know what you were doing was important? You always knew it was right. I mean, I know that you walked in the classroom, and I know your history, and I know you well enough, and I've heard you speak, that I know you walked in the classroom and you knew what you needed to do. But when was the moment that you knew it was important? Was that you, or did someone come to you and say, hey, you know what? I want you to, because now you speak nationally. Now you've done TED Talks, you've written books, you write articles, you are all over the place, and rightfully so, and preaching the gospel, as it were. Was it you that came to that epiphany, or did someone come to you and say, hey, you know what? This is what we need to do. This is what you need to do. This is the path.
Whew. That's a good question. Multiple epiphanies. So like I knew that teaching was important the minute that I cried about it. Um, I know I talk about this in my book. This is not a test, but it's like, let me say a little something. I had been following all the guidelines that I heard of, like during my first summer training. And during the summer training, they say, oh, you shouldn't really smile or laugh until December. If you want to give like a little something, like a little smile emoji, whatever, you can do that. But other than that, you're not really trying to show emotion up until December. Um, and that was easy for me because I'm like, I rarely show emotion to begin with. I've only become recently more open because of my son. And, that's again another conversation. But like, during that era, I was like, oh, you want me to show no emotion to anybody? Okay. So then I'll show no emotion to like all the students and to the adults. Like nobody will know anything about me. I'll be really good at this poker game if you want me to. And that was my first year. And people were saying, oh, you're a great teacher. Like, look at the way that you have the kids under control and all the other good stuff. And, little did they know that in my own classroom, even though I had a poker face on, like I really was doing the extensive work of getting to really know kids and trying to make my class more engaging. At some point in March, I think it was that first year, I said, all right, so I'm going to open up a little bit and let's see what happens. And of course, like this class was it was a mix of students who kids that the adults felt like they could throw away. A mix of kids who they could throw away or had special services or that were always in trouble, et cetera, et cetera. And a lot of the adults, frankly, did not. Some of them did, but a lot of them didn't serve them correctly. And, they had gone through a number of things. And, it became my turn to kind of go through the numbers of issues that they wanted to show to everybody else. And so I sat there. I remember just sitting, you know what, I'm going to sit in this seat and you do whatever you want. And the kids pretty much did whatever they wanted. And I said, okay, so we just wasted time. And the kids who behaved well, they sat there. And the kids who didn't, they just did whatever they wanted. And I had some free time between that class and the end of class because, that was like a homeroom back then. At the homeroom, I literally just had them stand up. I just, in my very quiet voice, I said, I really care about this class. And I cannot believe that this is the way that it went down. I worked very hard to try to plan a lesson for you, and you showed a lot of these behaviors. I understand that you're very frustrated, and I understand it's been pretty hard, but the way that I felt disrespected was not appropriate. And we put a lot of work into this year, and I couldn't believe that I saw what I saw from you. And like, I think I just really, really held it. And then I lined the kids up. I escorted them out of the building, and then I think I went into my administrator's office, and the math coach was in there too because they're buddies. And like, I think I just wailed. I was like, "Oh my god, what is this? I'm able to teach again." So like, I'm just napkins and drool and all this other stuff just coming out of my face, and they couldn't believe it because I had been holding my face that entire time. But I think that's when I knew it was important because I felt something really deep about it. Like there was something, again, going into like the levels of who I thought I was coming into the profession, right? And then there's like the person who ended up coming out, and then the person who I was like, okay, so I need to make less of a separation between Jose from outside of the school building and Mr. Vilson from inside the school building. And since that year, I've been trying to bridge that gap between the persona that I had espoused and the person who I actually am. And I think I've gotten to a point where they're relatively indistinguishable. It's like, okay, this is good because that means I'm becoming more of that one, that unity that I needed to be for the students. And so, believe it or not, even after that episode, like the temptation was to take the day off the next day because that was recommended. And I was like, no, actually, I need to show them that I'm in this to win this. So I'm going in there tomorrow and I'm going to do this again. And they're going to do exactly what I'm asking them to do. And we're not going to have an episode like that again. And we didn't. We were good for the rest of the year. And I think that was meaningful for everybody. In fact, that class, there was actually one student who wasn't as well behaved. She ended up becoming a teacher later on. in her life. So she's a teacher now. She's in her third year, I think it is. So she's probably doing better than I am as, you know, as a third year teacher. But dang, it's like, these are things that are really, really meaningful. And I knew right then, I was like, this profession really matters a lot because of how much you can pour into it, how much of your person you pour into it, how much of your love you can really pour into it. Or you can be that teacher who doesn't pour any love whatsoever, has no humanity about themselves, and they can last 25, 30, 35 years just doing the same old thing without pouring themselves at all into it. But I was like, the way I want to teach and how I want to teach, that really matters. And that's when I knew it mattered. I mean, all the other stuff that I do, fine, like cool. And I probably knew because, you know, any number of views, likes, and who responded, who brought me in, yada, no. But then when it came to teaching, I think that's the moment that I knew. I was like, I can do this. I can do this for a long time. So, and I'm in many ways, I'm still in it.
That's wonderful. So let's just, for those of you just joining us, we're talking to José Luis Vilson. This is the book, This Is Not a Test, A New Narrative on Race, Class, and Education. It's a wonderful book. It's not just for educators. We all can learn a great deal from this book. And it's available on our bookshop.org. Social Justice Power Hour list. We have your book there. We have all the guests, all the authors that have been on. Please go buy the book there, because what's great about bookshop.org is they give money back to independent bookstores. And what we recommend is, of course, as always, you buy this book, buy a copy for yourself, buy a copy for a friend, buy a copy for an enemy who will become a friend. This book especially, buy a copy for a teacher friend, or buy a copy for your local school district for them to have on their shelves. And almost most importantly, of course, buy at least one copy, but also call your local library and make sure your local library has this on their shelves. And if they don't, you simply request it, and then they'll get a copy. And that's the way that a lot of our folks who can't afford to buy every book can be acquainted with some incredibly wonderful ideas and knowledge and drop in science. So this is the book we've been talking about. Please consider getting a copy for yourself and your whole family. So Jose, you just talked about this very difficult moment. You're you know, there's mucus everywhere, liquid coming out of all orifices. You're thinking about, you know, they're saying take the day off. Like, no, I have to come back. So when was the next moment when you knew you were doing it right?
Well, I mean, there's the teaching part, and then there's like the blogging part, right? You're well aware of, you know, all the things that have come out. I think so much of what folks may not know is that I was in fact blocked by every single computer in NYC Department of Education. That would be the largest public school system in the country, and I was blocked in every single computer except for central offices. And I knew that my writing mattered, not when I got a ton of views or even when I found that fact out, was when I had actually been invited to speak at a panel that was forward facing with all the network and district leaders from across the city. And they're all there. And it was like, okay, so I'm going to talk to you about servant leadership. That was my own thing. It wasn't even about, well, it was in a way troublemaking because I was in their presence, right? But fine. Just me being there was a thing. And I got read any number of rights at the moment, but that's another story. So at the end of it, someone came up to me and they're like, yeah, everybody in this room reads your blog, but they either love to read it or they love to hate to read it. And I was like, oh, okay. And of course, like, this is the day before one of my birthdays, and I'm here like, okay, so happy birthday to me. This is all well and good. But it was like, so all this time, like, I had thought that maybe, all these views had come out of like outside of the school district or across the country or across the world or whatever. No, it was happening right in New York City, where people were literally like, maybe even throwing shade on some levels, or writing in their newsletters about how dangerous social justice was, and look at all these pithy little bloggers thinking that they could just type things in opinions without having an informed opinion, and because they don't lead a district, yada yada. And I'm like, oh, so great! I had an effect on how you treat teachers, because of the things that I wrote for free. Okay, so this is gonna be good. And so I was like, I'm gonna write a book about this whole thing. So, I think that's kind of that was kind of my way of saying, you know what, like at the moment, there was very few of us who wanted to write in a radical way. And by radical, I do mean like we don't have to do the thing that everybody wants us to do. And in terms of ladder climbing and trying to move up the ranks and get all these little things or whatever. Like, as I said, no, like there's a blog, I could do it for free. I'm gonna start writing about what I think, and I'm gonna get better at this writing, and I'm gonna communicate with other folks who want to do the same thing. And so just being able to do that at the moment in time before Twitter really became a thing, it's like, yes, like we can actually just take control of this narrative in a really profound way. And I think that so many teachers who are doing things now in that sense are able to do it more comfortably now because of some of the sacrifices I had to make, both on the reputation level and an opportunity level for me. But I know it means a lot now because of what I did back then. And how now the narrative it feels like all over the place. Everyone's talking about anti-racism and inclusivity and belonging, and how we can make math more social justice-y, and how more of us could be more vocal in teacher leadership and all. Like I feel like I've had an influence on so many of these different elements, and now it's more mainstream to do this thing. When back then it was on the margins back then, but I felt like I had a hand in pushing it into the mainstream, and I'm glad to have done that, because I think everybody benefited from it, not just teachers, but really more so students, and hopefully thousands, if not millions, of students got to benefit from the some of the sacrifices that folks like me had at the time.
I mean, you were prescient. You saw something that many people didn't see, and before our current administration, before George Floyd, before the protests, the vigils, and the pandemic, all the moments we're facing now, all at once. Years before that, you were preaching from the pulpit of the unknown, and not knowing where we were going, but knowing what we needed and knowing where we needed to go. One of the other great things that you said that I wanted to bring up is you say, quote, "By teaching students of color that the best way to succeed is to respond to tests the way the state demands, determine the validity of an argument under the state's rules, examine essays only if they follow the state's standards. We are creating education via deculturation or stripping a culture, instead of transculturation, the merging of cultures." And this is what I love. This is what your writing almost always does. There's always the punchline. Although it's not funny, it's incredibly powerful. Here's the punchline. We didn't land on education reform. Education reform landed on us. Well done, sir. Well done.
Thank you. Shout outs to Malcolm X. Shout outs to Denzel Washington and Spike Lee. Yeah, it's real. So, even in this moment in time, we're recognizing that the pandemic has kind of laid waste to the arguments that we need all these things when, with all this disease going around, maybe we didn't need all this stuff. And all the folks who tried to force a standardized test upon students soon started to realize how flawed that argument was, with a lack of universal healthcare, with a lack of universal Wi-Fi and broadband for the entire United States, with a lack of real critical understanding of how time zones work, and how globalization and capitalism have had deleterious effects on, I guess, a more communal-based understanding of the ways that we think about knowledge. So, there were AP exams that were given, or GREs that were given during this pandemic, and you're like, why would you do that? Like, there's no reason. Just let people in, or don't let them in at all, and then let's find the reason why. But then some of it is such a farce, because really what it is too, like, and this is me talking as an agent of the state, right? Because I think every teacher if you get hired in a public school, you are an agent of the state. You're supposed to transfer and transmit any number of standards that have been handed out to you. And whether there are written rules or unwritten rules about how you're supposed to do your job, they are still kind of there. They're present. And in New York State, word is bond, so they don't have to be written in order for it to be true, right? But the ways that we become more radical about the ways that we do things is by, looking directly and facing those things and saying, what are the either subversive or overt things I'm going to do to push back against what so many of our kids face, right? And one of the ways that I was able to do that was by saying, okay, so you want students to do this test and you want them to read this passage and try to understand what this person said. Okay, great. So then where do you give space for the kids to interpret what that passage also said? Where do you give space for what the author, because there were so many instances where the author themselves were like, that's not what I meant to say. But their writing got taken, it got put into a standardized test. And so, of course, the standardized test has to be right over the author. Who asked the author what the author wants? So you start seeing like how complicated this gets when we take a narrative that, and corrupt it, frankly. Like a standardized test is a corruption in a way because we don't allow for multiple interpretations of a text. And then we don't actually ask for author's purpose from the author themselves, or we don't give students who are taking this test an entryway for them to get into the thing that they're supposed to be reading. We're just supposed to read the thing and then let the state tell us whether or not that thing is correct or not. So the state becomes the corrector and not, let's say, a more communal understanding of the multiple truths that could be allowed within that space, right? And that's that agency talk. That actually goes back to naming too, right? Because if we constantly went to saying, well, the text says that the student's name is Juan, but then the multiple choice test, says, okay, so you have these 4 choices and the one you pick is John, and that's correct. But I told you to call me Juan. Why are you doing that? And then why are you anglicizing my name because you wanted a kid to get something on a multiple choice? Like, there is just so many different levels. But unfortunately, I think people get scared when you use the word radical because they're like, oh, that just means you're trying to be lefty. Which, by the way, there's nothing wrong with being lefty social. I'm a lefty socialist, whatever. Yeah, right. But then to that point, it's like, okay, all I'm asking you to do is just give students a way to really be thoughtful about the thing that you are making them ingest. Like, if you are not giving them a way to, have some agency about what they're allowed to take into their minds and hearts, then what exactly do you think you're doing? If your education is really, indoctrination, then you should just say so. You should just say, hey, like, I really just want to indoctrinate you into the ways that, we white people think. And by white people, I mean the white wealthy landowner type folks that the Constitution had actually made room for, not like the white folks who may also benefit from a really radical education. I think everybody can benefit from such an education, but again, that's for another radio program, isn't it?
No, we have a lot to cover, and I hope you'll come back to cover a lot more of it. But I can't believe how quickly this hour has gone, and we have just a few minutes left. And I wanted to get to this because it's such an important component of how you teach, how you teach, how you preach, how you move things forward, and that's your family. Your family is an incredibly important motivator for you, inspiration for you, and from what I understand from reading of you and from you, really radicalized who you are.
Absolutely. So, something I find interesting is that people like to say that as you get older, you become more conservative. And of course, I'm like, where? How? Why would you do that? In fact, I think because I've been more steeped into the conditions of my students I think before I had a child, I was in it at least seven years, right? And so think about the hundreds of students who I have contact with, either through my own classroom or through my own school building. And after a while, you're like, there's something seriously wrong with our society that doesn't allow our students to flourish. But once I had a child, I became fearless. I'm like, I could see why so many parents scream and yell at so many different adults. Like I would do anything for my child to make sure that they were well fed, that they were well nourished, they were well educated. Like I felt like a blind. I was like, you know what, I'm gonna defend everything here. Like it doesn't matter what's going on, and you're gonna have to like, put me in the case somewhere to get me to calm down if I don't get what I need. And so I started applying similar theories to my own students and how, at once, yes, like I have to bear the brunt of making sure that my child comes into this world with a full actualization, or at least a partial, acclimation of what's going on around them and trying to help them understand what's going on, right? That's my job, is to protect them. And, those of us who are, Black and brown parents, we really recognize that we have to have conversations that are way more in depth than what the normative conversation might be, sure. And there is a level where you start saying, okay, like wherever my kid goes, fine, but I'm going to protect my child. And so in my own classroom, I said, okay, not only are these 30 students that I have in front of me, these are 30 babies who we have to protect and nourish, sometimes from other adults, mostly from other adults, to be honest, sometimes from each other, and the things that they've all learned and ingested from things that they've seen. And, I think as the more vulnerable they became, the more guarded I became about them. Like that was a thing for me. I just said, I have to like knock every sense of, I guess, the habits that I used to have about the ways that I thought about children, and really knock that down and become more kind, more gentle, more loving as possible. And the ways that it worked, didn't always. I did try my best. I am a human being. But even that acknowledgement, I think, really allowed me to connect to children in a way that perhaps others don't get a chance to, because they don't humble themselves enough to say, all right, I'm going to guard for you. Like I have to be the guardian for you. I have to be strong for you. I have to like do the things that I need to do just to make sure that like you feel like this 45 minutes, this 90 minutes that we have together is really valuable, not just for your mind, but for your heart. And once I started taking that into mind, I looked at my own son, I looked at my own wife. I was like, yeah, like this is who I need to be. I need to be strong for y'all. And so that just became a thing. And, even as a parent now, looking at the public school that my son goes to, I become kind of that lion too, when I need to be in the parent meetings where I'm like, you know what, like my students aren't being served by the thing that you're doing. What are you going to do to change this? Because this is not working for the kids that are in here, not just my own, but all of y'all. So that became a running theme. And needless to say, I'm a bit of a troublemaker in my own son's school too. And great, we're going to do this.
An angelic troublemaker. You're an angelic troublemaker. So I think that made you, if I dare say, that made you it completed the puzzle. You had the spiritual energy, you had the intellectual energy, you had the academic energy, and your family brought you the emotional energy. And did it complete you? Did it bring that classroom presence to a whole for you?
Absolutely, without a doubt. And it's always that sense of trying to unify those spirits, right, and trying to get aligned in the best ways possible. I think people are always trying to go for like, oh, what's your best self? I think my best self is going to depend on like just how angry I can get at a moment's notice, and then how loving I can get at a moment's notice, and then trying to figure out all those emotions all at once. And the more intelligent I become about all those energies and all those emotions, the better I can be as a teacher, as a father, as a husband, as an activist, as a writer. Like these are all the things that like I want to be able to do well in. And the only way to do well in all those things is if I apply similar principles in all the spaces that I occupy. When people start really getting a sense of what that alignment looks like for them, they become even more powerful, and frankly, they become more dangerous. And I think you see that throughout history, where people start to get more and more aligned to the thing that they are, and how they connect to everybody else's, shared humanity in that way. And it's like, oh yeah, that person's dangerous now because they know too much. They know way too much about themselves and who they are. That's wild. You shouldn't be doing that. Like we got to squash that. And then, because if more people got that example, then we get to overthrow things and structures and institutions. But that's just me.
No, that's the perfect way for us to end the evening, because now it's past 8 and I've kept you after school. Prince, be proud. It's the after party now. But this conversation is so interesting and enlightening and important. I want to ask you this, and I want to put you on the spot so you don't have to answer directly, but I would love to have you back on after the election, because no matter how it goes, we're going to need guidance on how to move forward and how the classroom should look depending on what happens on that Tuesday.
Yeah, I'm in.
All right, great. We'd love that. So the book we've been talking about tonight, on and off, is this book. It's called This Is Not a Test, A New Narrative on Race, Class, and Education. It is available on our bookshop.org link, easy access for you. Take the link. I want to thank Chris, our volunteer, who's been with us all night in the comment section, giving you all the links to Jose's social media accounts and how you can follow him. And not only should you buy the book, but also really go watch a couple of videos that Jose's done. The TED Talk is great. A couple of the interviews. It's really wonderful to watch him without a clown like me interrupting him every 5 minutes. So it'd be better to watch him just unedited. Thank you so much, my friend. I hope that you will come back. I will hound you, because I think after the election, either way it goes, we're going to need to help our community move forward, hopefully in a positive direction, but if not, even more heavy lifting. So we look forward to seeing you in a couple of months, my friend, and best to your family.
We have some really good work to do. Thank you for having me.
All right, be well, my friend. Take care.
Take care.
So everybody, that was José Luis Vilson, educator, activist, and we didn't even talk about, and my apologies, EduColor and the wonderful work that he's doing with that organization. So check that out as well. Wonderful conversation. As always, so important in these power hours to build a community. And remember, these folks aren't coming to talk to me. They're coming to talk to you, the community, and we thank you for being with us. Join us tomorrow night for Josh Gondelman. Join us on Friday for the Open and Out Mic night. Join us every night. We're here from at 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific for the Power Hour. You bring the power to the hour, and we appreciate that so much. So we'll see you again in about 22 hours and 55 minutes. Until then, be good to each other. Be good to your families, chosen or otherwise. And most importantly, by far, be good to yourselves. Much love and respect, everybody. We'll see you tomorrow night. Thanks so much.